Oké, dit is Rupert Report en ik ga nu weer even terugkomen op Q. En zoals je ziet is dit de interview die door Tracy Beans is gemaakt met Jerome Corsi. Dat is een intellectueel die verbonden is met geheime diensten en dat soort dingen en die erg veel onderzoek doet. Dan ga ik even aan de hand van het interview van hem en haar, tussen haar en hem, wat verduidelijken op Nederlands gebied, zou ik maar zeggen, dat in ieder geval mensen bekend worden met Q.
And with my intelligence background and the like, I'm finding it's easy. I don't want to say easy, but it's possible to decode Q because he's speaking in the kind of a code language that other intelligence professionals are going to pick up on, and he's very skilled. I'm quite impressed with Q, and I'm very dedicated to continuing this work.
Thank you. You've been a massive asset to us.
Maar ik kan iedereen aanraden om naar het interview te gaan kijken. Ik zal het in de link onder in de beschrijving zetten, de link, er rechtstreeks naartoe. En dan kunt u rustig op gemak heel dat interview doornemen. En dan zult u zien wat er allemaal gaat gebeuren de komende tijd. Want dat is dus enorm veel ontwikkelingen ook op het gebied van, zoals de Amerikanen dat noemen, draining the swamp. Dus
Tell some of the folks out there who aren't familiar with you and will be now what your background is.
Well, I've had a long background. I've had a Harvard PhD in political science going back to '72, and I did a lot of intelligence work through universities, mostly for the federal government. I've had top secret clearance with the State Department. I've worked on terrorist projects, trained by psychiatrists around the world. I continue to do a lot of that work. And also, starting in 2004, I wrote with John O'Neill, I co-authored the book Unfit for Command against John Kerry. Even when I was a child, I'd been involved in politics. My father was a labor union lobbyist for the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen. I had spent time around John Kennedy and knew the Kennedys going back to the McClellan Committee hearings. I've always been very deeply involved in politics. I got my PhD at Harvard in 1972, as I mentioned. And I pretty much changed careers. I'd spent 25 years in international banking. My career is very complex. I'm not sure anybody's ever going to ever sort it out. But since 2004, I've written over 20 books on politics. Again, QAnon is very close to Donald Trump and present at some of these really important inner circle White House meetings. QAnon also says, how much did SA Saudi Arabia donate to Clinton Foundation? And again, there's tens of millions of dollars. And the point is, the Clintons took that money from Saudi Arabia, and Hillary was going to run as the first woman candidate. And on all of that, what you had was, again, double standard, hypocrisy, because women in Saudi Arabia aren't even, they're treated like second class and sometimes lower than animals. And here the Clintons are taking the money, running on identity politics, and again, ignoring the obvious hypocrisy and exploitation of women that are going on in accepting this money from Saudi Arabia. So what QAnon is pointing out here is that the Clinton Foundation is guilty of some massive, massive crimes, and it ties into the Democratic Party politics, which is all about exploiting the identity politics groups that they wanted to vote for them, that they're trying to champion.
aan de andere kant van, van de oceaan is het precies hetzelfde als hier. De P van de A en GroenLinks en hun cronies, hun asociale propaganda minions van de NOS en de NPO. Die doen er al grof aan mee om identity politics. Dus overal iedereen voor natie uitmaken en minderheden opstoken om hier te rellen en, binnen te komen en op hun eigen partijen te stemmen. En maar te rellen en hier problemen te veroorzaken en de oorspronkelijke bewoners van Nederland als naties weg te zetten. Het is te grof voor woorden. En deze asociale figuren bij de NOS, die gaan vroeg of laat ter verantwoording worden geroepen.
Complete, utter vacuously immoral exploitation of women, minorities, and other groups that the Democrats want to pretend they're championing. So QAnon, by talking about this phone call, is pointing out again to the hypocrisy that exists between the Democrats and the groups like Saudi Arabia or Australia, which the Democrats are so deeply involved in, through the Clinton Foundation taking millions of dollars.
Do you want to get into that part of this post?
Yes, what basically QAnon is pointing out to is that Australia has been controlled by the Labour and Liberal parties, very leftists. But when you get down to whenever Q asks these questions, who controls Australia? Well, clearly the Liberal Party controls Australia right now because that's the Prime Minister. And he says, well, who really controls Australia? Well, who really controls them is the globalists. And he said, how about the UK? They're a Commonwealth country. And he said, well, why is this relevant? It's relevant because the UK doesn't control Australia. What controls Australia is the globalists, the same globalists that would like to control the UK, except for the Brexit movement. And it's relevant because Q is saying, look beyond the political structures in power as to the real sources in power, which have to do with the money. And that was his point to begin with Australia donating to the Clinton Foundation good when the Clintons have no intention of doing humanitarian good, except to scam the money from people who contribute to them or states who contribute to them, believing that they're going to help AIDS in Africa. And the Clintons saying, along with Rambaxy, it's just blacks in Africa. What do we care if they die? The planes and trains can be manipulated by the deep state in order to allow an extraction of someone like the Iwans, who's part of the conspiracy, who's part of the the deep state coup against Trump, to escape. And what QAnon's pointing out is, better watch this and be concerned about this.
Het zijn Pakistaanse geheime diensten, ISI. Dus hetzelfde bijna als ISIS, maar zonder de S aan het eind. Maar het zijn gewoon jihadis die feitelijk al jarenlang een chantage racket, mafiosi, jihadi mafiosi chantage ring vormen rond Congress in de VS. Want ze hadden toegang tot via de Blackberries en dus de PDA's van de mensen zelf, de Congressleden, hadden ze toegang tot volledige mail exchange van congresleden en allerlei vertrouwelijke en geheime informatie die ze onderling uitwisselen of hun correspondentie. De elektronische correspondentie hadden ze toegang toe. Dat ging met terabytes, ging dat tegelijkertijd per dag richting Pakistan. Waar ze waarschijnlijk grote teams hebben die dat gaan analyseren. En in principe mensen chantabel maakt. Die hebben jarenlang hun greep op het Amerikaanse congres gehad. En die zijn ze nu aan het verliezen, want er zijn verschillende gearresteerd. Maar er zijn er ook een aantal gevlucht en daar heeft hij het nu over. En nu gaan we even verder.
Because as long as the airports and the air control are under federal authority, even going back to 9/11, the only way we know what happened to the planes in 9/11 is because the federal authorities told us this. Well, the federal authorities can be compromised. You'll be fed disinformation. And unless you have independent verification of an airport like Atlanta being shut down, all you're relying upon is the federal air controllers, you don't know what they've hidden or what, as he calls the clowns, the CIA, have devised in order for somebody to be extricated or to be...
Use them in the future.
Well, it's important to keep them cataloged because we may need them in the future. And also it's important, and QAnon points out that President Trump has been tweeting recently that he's very concerned that we don't have civilian control of the airports, because with civilian control we could get accountability. Mm-hmm. We get public recording and public multiple sources recording. We'd have better information. When the government's in control of the information, and we've seen this repeatedly with the Clintons and with the FBI and with the DOJ, they hide, bury, lie, cheat, etc. And it goes back to the deep state involvement. And this has been something that Q is pointing out, and he's pointing this out specifically in this post with the Awan brothers, and he's concerned that this Awan knows so much and is so deeply involved in this conspiracy with all the work he did for W. Wasserman Schultz and the Democratic Party, all the information was downloaded on the hard drives, and these are Pakistanis, related to the fact that Trump now wants to cut off aid to Pakistan. This is all related, and he's just warning us here. Let's make sure that Awan doesn't suddenly escape. Q is saying that all of the Clinton Foundation was a money laundering facility for the deep state, and Obama was equally involved in money laundering for the deep state. All these hundreds of millions of dollars floating around. Okay, then he says, why is Hussein traveling the globe and visiting major financial institutions?
Een korte samenvatting van dit interview. Ik zal het in de beschrijving zetten en ik kan iedereen aanraden om dit te gaan kijken.